This is Dave Meltzer with Entrepreneurs, the Playbook. We have one of the most poignant companies today. They're all over the place. CEO of Organifi, Mae Steigler. Welcome to the podcast.
David, thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited because I just got back from Expo West, and there has been a major shift in the world, the organic world, the plant-based world, all of the different things that are out there in, genetic reengineering. And, you could take a cell from a plant and create more plants. And I'm learning so much every single day. And Organifi is really leading the way in kind of adaptive genetics, I think they call it, of being able to utilize sustainable practices to create more healthy foods, which to me is one of the four primary things that I teach people in their lives to live longer and better. One of my great philosophies that seems to be applicable to everyone. Um, can you take a step back for me and kind of explain the idea of this adaptive genetics when it comes to organic foods and solutions?
Yeah, and I think you're talking about adaptogens, right? Superfoods and adaptogens.
Sure. If that's
It's
the way I pronounce it, yeah. I
it's
thought
a
there's like
mouthful.
adaptive genetic blends or something, but yes.
I liked
Being able
adaptogenetics
to,
though.
yeah.
It sounded much
Let's write a
more
book together.
advanced.
Yeah, let's write another book together. This would be good.
I think we're actually onto something new here. But to your point and to your question, it's a really interesting time to be involved in the industry. I am really exciting to recognize so much of the science that's coming out. It's an interesting intersection point between marrying basically traditional medicine, a lot of like historical, even anthropological research around what herbs and even practices and techniques that cultures used with today's now modern science of recognizing how there's so much plant-based medicine, plant-based benefit that can be had. And I think it's like a great overlap today where we're recognizing kind of this intersection point where modern lifestyles, specifically around stress management, can be supported as we learn how to integrate and eat more consistently these healthy foods. So we really focus at Organifi, we focus on adaptogens, and they're a class of herbs and plants essentially that have these adaptive mechanisms in the body that help us basically be more stress resilient. So in a very simple way, I'll explain, as we consume these plants such as like ashwagandha, rhodiola, reishi, lots of mushrooms you hear about, there's a really interesting research coming out to show how consumption of these almost to the benefit of just like simple antioxidants for the body, how much we know they're good for us and help our body adapt to stress. This class of plants and herbs help us manage our stress level. And essentially, the body maintains this state of homeostasis, the state of balance. And if we consume foods, specifically plants, that help us maintain this, it's a much more resilient state of health and wellness that we can be living in consistently. So, yeah, at Organifi, we focus on superfood blends that incorporate things like adaptogens to help us manage our stress levels. Today, we're living pretty wild lifestyles and new forms of stress in all different places coming off the, back of a world pandemic. So working from home, you name it, right? Both of us.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because my major shift in my paradigm, not just with my mindset, but my heart set and the actual handset of what I do, is shifting of, that idea of homeostasis is at ease.
Yeah.
And, I do a lot of research on all three areas about what am I doing to interfere with my natural state of being, which is ease, and food, which used to be medicinal in nature that would help keep us at ease, historically now, at least probably since the 70s, is really creating dis-ease. And you can separate those how you like, but I think everyone understands. What are some of the areas over the last 50 years that food itself, nutrition, has created dis-ease, that now with your solution, we're creating and clearing that interference for different areas? And I know we just talked about mood and stress.
Yeah.
That's only one of the areas. There's a lot of areas that contribute or aggregate to mood and stress that also have benefits from just being at ease. What are some of those that Organifi addresses?
Yeah. And so well said, David. My background and kind of what I studied growing up was agriculture and food science and animal nutrition. So I got into this space about 15, 17 years ago now from more the animal health perspective. I was working in animal nutrition, and something that's so interesting is just to your point, the change in how we produce food over the last 50 to 100 years has really radically changed. And so, what we look to address first at Organifi is how we produce food, coming back to and supporting the most organic function. And so we really focus on sourcing organic foods, organic ingredients to have in our products rather than synthetic or potentially chemical laden ingredients. So we really come back to really high quality testing to ensure there's no pesticides or herbicides in the food. You talk about trying to manage stress today. And one of the things that is really important is to minimize chemicals in our bodies that we have a hard time processing. And so some of that just starts with the fundamentals of food quality. And, as about 10 years ago, I really got to witness the growth of the organic food movement, and especially in California, but in the United States. And I'm still optimistic that we'll hit some of the standards that Europe promotes in just controlling the quality of food that its population has access to and consistently consumes. And I'll bring this back to kind of why this matters so much is as we consume foods or kind of put anything in our body that we don't digest naturally well, it's a stressor on our system. So, what at Organifi, what we tried to focus on first is removing the obstacles to living our best life. You talked about kind of the fundamentals of homeostasis. That is the balance of health, the balance of our healthy natural state. And something interesting to recognize is today, I think our normal is very skewed. As a population, we kind of in many ways have normalized or made it feel normal to maybe take sleeping pills, maybe laxatives, maybe, of course, caffeine, all the things that help us sleep well, digest well, and have energy, where it naturally, our bodies are designed to do that well if we're giving ourselves the right food and the right quality. So at Organifi, we first focused on removing the biggest affronts, the biggest challenges to removing things that our bodies naturally maybe create inflammation from or have allergies to. And so we just focused on sourcing the highest quality ingredients, removing anything that would have toxins or chemicals in it. And we used a lot of intense quality standards for that, not just USDA organic, but also we test for glyphosate, which is the most common pesticide used today, and just ensure that we're not adding any ingredients that may have those chemicals in them in our products.
And with your products, the sleep and recovery, mood and stress, brain health and clarity, obviously energy and performance, weight metabolism and women's wellness always kind of go together, although male vanity is on its fastest pace and rise. But one of the areas that I'm always curious about from, the different interviews I've had and research I've done is I have 4 children, and chronic disease and toxicity of nutrition is so much different. Me to my both grandfathers lived to 97, and I always say, well,
Wow.
they were smoking and drinking their whole lives. How they lived to 97? Well, they ate organically, not by choice, but because for 60 years
That
there
was
wasn't
normal.
anything processed, right? It was the normal. And so I'm really looking at my own children with over, I think when I was a kid, less than 1% of kids had chronic disease, and now over 50% because of these diseases of our nutrition. Are the products good for children? Should we be, from the time they're born, instituting this type of diet to raise and elevate the awareness, one, but two, the importance for living with longevity and a better life?
Yeah, absolutely. And first, like I agree fundamentally and optimistically that we'll have better nutritional focus for our younger generation specifically, because it's so important. And to hopefully get back to some of the ways of eating more naturally, just by controlling use of chemicals and pesticides and whatnot in growing foods. And I want to add one caveat here. In studying agriculture, I really respect the evolution and kind of innovation of food production. I think it's really important for us, especially to figure out how to sustainably grow food. So I want to anchor that, like, I very much see the importance of that. And then being very mindful of where we sacrifice quality of food for production volumes. And so I think that's been the overstep in agriculture and even just governance of food production. And so really importantly, support developing more food controls, quality controls for our food system, first and foremost for younger generations, just because of how important it is that we limit, again, that the same challenges to our immune systems and our state of homeostasis, our state of balance as we're growing and developing. That's really, really key. And so very safe are superfoods and adaptogens for all different age groups. And I think so importantly, being able to integrate more of those, because so many of them have the fundamentals of just great antioxidant capacity and supportive nutrient profiles. So I think as we get that more expected in our food system, rather than looking at just the macronutrients of, fats, proteins, and carbohydrates, we can start really looking at food value more closely. So I think it requires a new filter, a new lens, or even almost a new language of interpreting some of our food quality. Oftentimes the caloric quality metric that we use for food value is so skewed because we don't look at things like potentially the fact that an apple is not the same as an apple 20 years ago or even 50 years ago. And we put so much value in how a food looks, what a food looks like in the grocery store, like bright red tomatoes, but potentially those have a lot of actually modifications done to them to look that way rather than the nutrient quality of a really ugly tomato.
Right. Yeah, no, it's one of the things I looked at trying to find my wife that we were talking about earlier. I said, I'm kind of like the ugly tomato, just really good stuff on the inside. Anyway, what's interesting too in your space is certain people are attracted to the space, and it allows you, I think, to have an advantage in corporate culture. We have different businesses. I'm, coming from technology and sports and entertainment for so many years. It attracts a different type of person than Organifi
Undoubtedly.
is gonna check. And so I'm a value-based leader. I've written a book called Compassionate Capitalist, Connected to Goodness. Jack Canfield and I, how to build the life you love. I should have been in the organic space or my newly founded adaptive genetic space. I'm founding that where
You're making it right now, David.
exactly. I'm trademarking it. But you have such a great culture at the company, which is why I truly was attracted to you in the company. Is I just kept hearing about the best places to work and all the things about dreaming and imagination and the conscious, all these cool things. How important is the core values of the company? Is it easier to attract people that are aligned with your core value? And what are those, core values that created such a great culture that you have there?
Years ago, I got great advice to be weird enough that when people walk in your office front doors, they know right away if they like it or not. And many people won't. And so we
Right.
got that great advice. And I've been with the company since day one, building the team for the last 10 years or so. And so it's been quite an adventure to now be in the CEO seat just for this last 3 years. And over these years, I feel like it is a consistent lesson in what leadership actually means. I think over these different kind of eras within the company, it's always challenged me to continue to build into this space. It's not something that you figure out, even company culture. It's so dynamic. It's alive. It's like yogurt. It's like that kind of culture too. It's made up of the people within the company. So it's always changing. And it is so important to your question to anchor our core values within that dynamic kind of mechanism that culture is maintained and supported. And so it's kind of 3-part. It's the first, the loving kind of what is. So loving whatever our team ultimately is really magic. And it's not trying to make it cookie cutter or comparing our culture to something outside of our own team. So it is being weird and loving that, owning our weirdness. And then it's also consistently aiming to improve and see clearly what our culture is. We do a really intense kind of culture screen as a first interview phase. And it is learning to, there's kind of two parts to this, is learning to bring in diverse voices. So we want that kind of like the neurodiversity of our team to be quite wide. We want to be able to attract different types of thinking, different, we want analyzers and we want visionaries. It's so important to have those team dynamics built, but it's important that we care about the same things. And so a culture screen is really pivotal in our interview phase and process. And then I think 3, with culture, it's learning how to marry being very people first and people oriented with performance of the business, and how do you consistently connect those two things? Because without that connection, and we've done both, we've swung really hard, like, let's make the best culture ever and make it just like the funnest place to work, and then we've lost sight of some of the performance essentials. And being a privately funded business, we don't have outside funding. Like we have to make it work to be here. The last 10 years we really have. And so it's important to marry that performance perspective to say, people are close enough to their job, even KPIs, to feel traction and impact towards the actual company mission. And those two things tied together is so key.
Yeah, when I mentioned the name Organifi, people are like, "Oh, I love the energy of that company," which I think is a really cool compliment. It's one that I always saw
Thank
when
you.
people came in our office is, "Hey, I love the energy here." That, for me at least, raises my awareness that there's some great alignment in this pursuit of potential, in human potential, especially. And I appreciate that. We can give priority pricing to our playbook listeners out there and watchers and viewers. So type in the playbook, they'll give you priority pricing as a code word, and use the playbook. So I appreciate you guys promoting me and
Absolutely.
benefiting our community of like-minded, like-hearted, and like-handed people. May, just promise me one thing: you'll come on other one of my shows. The world needs to know more about Organifi. Organifi, you got to Organifi your life here. And I've created a new whole category of food called aptogenetic blends. May and I are going to come up with an aptogenetic book about the energetic and genetic inheritances and how to take care of both of those. I've already outlined it while you were speaking. I got a freaky type of mind myself. Mae Steigler, incredible CEO of Organifi, helping us live long and better lives. Please come back and visit me. Thanks for joining us.
David, thank you so much. My treat.
So much fun. This is Dave Meltzer here with Entrepreneurs, the Playbook.